I hereby call this meeting of the Police Commission for the Town of Orangetown to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Dennis Troy.
Present.
Councilman Tom Devaney.
Here.
Councilman Paul Valentine.
Here.
Councilman Jerry Vitari.
Here.
Supervisor Chris Day.
Here. We're going to defer the Pledge of Allegiance to the regular meeting, which starts at 7:30. Tonight, we have the first of what will be several in the county hosted in the various towns. An information session for the public, and I'm glad to see several members of the public here, about the upcoming criminal justice reforms, if you want to call them that were passed by the state of New York in the budget last year as part of the omnibus bill. So these reforms kind of were starting to hit and people realizing them after the fact. And now you have everyone from State Attorney General Tish James down to even, I think de Blasio said something about it. There's a lot of concern. There's concern about the finances, yes, but more concern about the public safety aspect. So all the town supervisors, most of the mayors, all of our elected officials at the county level got together recently. We're trying to get word to our state reps that changes need to happen to this so it can work for all of the state, but especially our communities. I want to make clear from the start, this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing. You're going to hear from Republicans and Democrats on this issue. I'm going to welcome some elected officials, then I'll turn it over to Chief Butterworth, who will welcome other police officials, and each will have a couple of brief statements or explanations from various law enforcement officials. We may have time for a couple of questions from the public, but possibly not, but we will get all the information out at least, and then there'll be a chance to continue the discussion going forward. So I do want to welcome Sheriff Lou Falco. We have also incoming DA Tom Walsh, DA-elect, if you will. We have two representatives from the Village of Nyack Board, Marie Lorenzini and Louise Parker, as well as the village manager from Nyack, Jim Politti. Thank you for coming. And of course, the folks up here at the town board of the town of Orangetown are here as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Butterworth, and go ahead.
Thank you, Supervisor, town board members, town clerk. Tonight's commission meeting, like you said, is going to be the first of numerous public meetings throughout the county regarding how law enforcement leaders in Rockland County believe the New York State criminal justice reforms that will go into effect on January 1 will affect our communities. I'm going to make a brief statement, then I'm going to have Police Chiefs Association of Rockland County President Chief Brad Wydell of Ramapo speak, and then Sheriff Louis Falco will speak on the position of the sheriff. Prosecutors when the criminal justice reform takes effect. That's offensive. I mean, we have our DA-elect here. I mean, they're sworn to uphold the law. They're chief law enforcement officers themselves. I think that's outrageous. Claiming that law enforcement professionals are using fear-mongering tactics and making outlandish claims that are not supported by evidence. Another thing that's kind of ridiculous because there is no evidence on how these things are going to turn out. We're just using our vast experience in law enforcement to guide this process through, and we're letting people know that this is one of the problems that's going. There's no evidence because some of these reforms are unheard of. They really are. This is such that a statement from the aide Kate Powers on behalf of New York State Attorney General Letitia James is that the challenges of complying with the new mandates are real, her words, and require investments in double-digit millions. So if these problems are real, it's not fear-mongering. These are realistic things, and this is somebody that is at the top level in this state of law enforcement. Other law enforcement officials, such as the head of the DA's Association of the State of New York, says this unfounded mandate will only cause victims to be victimized again when prosecutors are unable to perform the basic functions of their offices. That's a quote. Also, the Rensselaer County DA, Mary Pat Donnelly, they're playing roulette with public safety. Another one, the incoming NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea is concerned at how these new reforms are going to affect keeping people safe. That's what this is all about, public safety. That's the business we're in. That's the business you're in. And the outgoing commissioner of New York City Police Department says extreme criminal justice reform could unravel the hard-won gains, and it's only going to get worse. Again, his words. These are people just like the law enforcement leaders here tonight who have dedicated their professional lives to public safety, not people who are known to perpetuate false narratives and fear-mongering. This law enforcement community is not in any way against smart and justified criminal justice reform. I know in Rockland County, our mission is to help our communities and reduce fear. It is appalling that when it is believed that such extreme measures are needed, the people who have made these changes have sought no input from any in the criminal justice system that would be tasked with implementing these changes. They believe they are the experts and apparently have no interest in pausing this process with the goal of collaborative changes to our criminal justice system. I want to also be clear that our judges in Orangetown and the Nyack courts have always handled their duties with the highest standard of professionalism. And that's bail reform. That's basically a slap in the face of our judges and our district attorneys. I'm going to now welcome Ramapo Police Chief Brad Wydell, who is the president of the Police Chiefs Association of Rockland County. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association of Rockland County. The transformation about to take place to our system of justice is abrupt and dramatic. It is guaranteed to disrupt the system's equilibrium. These changes, in our opinion, will negatively impact public safety, especially the victims of crime and its witnesses. There are three areas I wish to address briefly tonight: discovery and its cost, mandatory release, and re-victimization. Please keep in mind that I'm just scratching the surface, and my comments in no way represent the true extent of the depth that this restructuring encompasses. The newly enacted 15-day discovery rule is not manageable. This rule requires that all materials, including reports, videos, audio tapes, notes, photographs, and lab results, be turned over to the defense within 15 days. I'm going to tell you right now, we already know that lab results take more than that to obtain. So how are we to comply with an unrealistic and impossible obligation? The reality for police departments in Rockland County is that we don't really have 15 days. Remember that this time frame includes getting all of the information that we have to put together and sending it to the district attorney for their review prior to them then releasing it to the defense. For us, it means that officers will be required to complete all arrest-related reports and that all supervisors will have to review and approve them prior to either of their shifts ending. There is no other way to compensate for this without incurring overtime. Costs are going to increase because staff must now be dedicated to calling reports, video, photos, as well as a host of other kinds of pieces of evidence, then prepare it in a package that can be electronically uploaded to the district attorney's office. This is labor intensive, and in the case of lengthy video, upload times can take hours. These changes will result in municipalities incurring substantial additional costs for personnel and equipment. It's unavoidable. Speaking for my department, as well as other departments in the county that I'm aware of, we've already budgeted significant supplementary overtime for 2020 just for paperwork completion. And unfortunately, the governor has made it clear that no funds from the state of New York will be provided to assist local government with these mandates. You're going to hear a lot about bail and pretrial detention, and what I will tell you is that it's eliminated in approximately 90% of the cases that we deal with. Even if a defendant has numerous felony arrests, misdemeanor convictions, felony convictions, failures to appear, the judge will no longer have discretion in the future to set bail. For virtually all misdemeanor and nonviolent felonies, both monetary bail and pretrial detention are eliminated. There's only a limited number of exceptions to this rule, some involving domestic violence cases, conspiracy to commit murder, criminal contempts involving domestic violence, and some limited sex offenses. For the violent felonies, money, bail, and detention are permitted, except for specific subcategories of violent felony offenses, such as burglary in the second degree, which is burglary of a dwelling, a home, or robbery, where somebody commits a robbery aided by another. Think about this. The burglar who burglarizes your home with your family in it is going to be released without bail shortly after an arrest. The robber who joins with another and robs you or your family will be released within a few hours of their arrest, all free to return and terrorize their victims or others within the day. Bail and detention are also going to be eliminated for every single drug felony, with the sole exception of operating as a major drug trafficker. In light of the massive opioid crisis facing our state, it is hard for us in law enforcement to reconcile that drug dealers arrested for Class A felonies are going to be released within a few hours of their arrest. Candidly, this goes for most violent crimes. It's been well documented that witness interference and witness intimidation are one of the biggest challenges we face in the criminal justice system today. Starting January 1st, witnesses already terrified by the defendant's criminal acts or gang affiliations will have their name, address, and phone number fully and immediately provided to the defendant under some perverse sense of justice. A defendant charged with a sexual assault could now depose a victim in a nauseating interview process. Further, they could petition the court to visit the scene of the crime, including the location where the act occurred. Whether for a sexual assault, a burglary, a robbery, a kidnapping, a general assault, I mean, you name it. Now the police are going to have to facilitate this visit back to the crime scene. This is insanity. To think that an officer who arrests a rapist or a burglar or a robber or a host of other violent offenders will have to stand by at the scene of the crime and to insist that the victim of this crime comply with the court's order to allow them access, it is highly offensive. It is a re-victimization of the original crime victim. But the worst part of it is that if the victim does not comply with the court's order, they, the victim, are subject to an arrest for contempt of court. That's not justice. I want to know what the people are going to think of our police officers who are placed in such an untenable situation. Our only hope in these cases is that our district attorney aggressively opposes any attempt by any defendant to return to the scene of a crime or to re-victimize people. Hopefully, our courts will side with the victims and the district attorney's position, but there's no guarantees. The precise effects of this law are hard to predict. Police departments across the county are working diligently to figure out how to adjust our policies and responses so as to ensure that we do comply with the law. Until our elected state officials acknowledge valid concerns and amend the worst provisions of this law, we're stuck with it. And we have a sworn obligation as police officers to uphold the law, and we will do our best to do so. What I would say to our state officials, our elected state officials, is although they may have voted yes for these reforms with the best of intention, they can no longer be oblivious to the consequences of them. On behalf of the Police Chiefs Association of Rockland County, I urge all of our state legislators to commit themselves to correcting the most dangerous and egregious parts of these reforms. Their focus must now be on restoring the rights and protections of those most deserving of our compassion and protection, and that's the innocent victims and witnesses of crime. I want to thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Chief Butterworth, for inviting me.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lou Falco. I'm the sheriff of the county. I just want to touch on a few things before I start this PowerPoint, and that is very simply listening to the words of Chief Wydell. We've had numerous police chiefs meetings and sheriff's meetings, not only in Rockland County, but around the state. As Supervisor Day said, we've met with every elected official. It knows no political boundary, whether it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, Conservative, it doesn't. The thing that's most alarming is it gets broken down into a couple things for us. One is an unfunded mandate. There's no financial way to subsidize all the police agencies, including the state police. We'll bring that into it because they're under the same restrictions. The Attorney General of the state of New York, our new DA walking in, being strapped with all of these things. But on top of it, you know, a few years back, the SAFE Act came into effect in New York State, and everything was about taking guns away from everybody and doing this and doing that. And you'll see in my presentation now, before it was an automatic arrest and you probably were bailed and went to jail if you brought a gun on school property. Now it's no longer, you're no longer going to be put in jail if you have a gun on school property. Prostitution on school property. And so you'll see what I'm going to refer to in my PowerPoint here tonight. And again, if we have time at the end, myself or the chiefs can take questions. That's great. I don't know what our time frame is going to be. So under the new law, over 400 crimes will require mandatory release. The thing I want to focus on here, drug dealers, house burglars, serial drunk drivers, and other lawbreakers will immediately be back on the streets to reoffend without any meaningful supervision. So, if somebody's DWI, they kill the driver in an oncoming car, no longer is aggravated vehicular homicide something you could take bail on. That person will be back out on the street if, in fact, they weren't either hurt in the accident or when they're released from the hospital, they're immediately back on the street.
We're not taking questions at this time, but maybe at the end if there is time. Thank you.
Effective January 1st, 2020, all forms of pre-arraignment bail will be abolished, and there will be restrictions on law enforcement detaining individuals pending arraignment. A new category of non-qualifying offenses will be governed under a new system of pretrial releases that will include only releases on ROR or the least restrictive non-monetary conditions. This, what you're seeing up there, you'll also see on the boards that are up in the front here. And the things that I want to really hit on that really will tie our hands and also hurt our children. And I have to tell you that that's very, very important to me. As everybody knows, the school shootings around the country, and everybody's putting police officers in schools. Criminal possession of a weapon on school grounds. Criminal possession of a controlled substance in the first and second degree. Criminal sale of controlled substance in the first. Even near school grounds, specific felony drug offenses involving the use of children, including the use of a child to commit a controlled substance offense. And we go on and on and on with all of these. Promoting a sexual performance by a child, hindering prosecution, tampering with a juror, or tampering with physical evidence, criminal possession of a weapon fourth, criminal sale of a firearm to a minor. No longer is it a bail offense. You're just automatically released after we get done with. We'll be in the station house doing our paperwork while that person is still out on the street. Aggravated cruelty to animals, over-dividing, torturing or injuring animals, animal fighting. These are some of the exceptions to the mandatory appearance ticket. An open warrant, failure to appear within 2 years, offenses needing an order of protection or DMV restriction, Article 130, that's the sex offenses, domestic violence, escape third, bail jumping second, individual needing court assistance for a medical issue.
That's the second bail jumping offense and the third escaping attempt.
That is
They have
correct.
to try to jump out twice
And
before
so,
they can get bail.
let me touch on that, because the sheriff's office is the one that extradites and investigates all the felony warrants after, in fact, they're arrested in the police departments, and if they're indicted, they don't show up for court. So, to your point, Mr. Day, I have to go to California and pick you up. I spend $7,000 or $10,000 of your taxpayer money to go and get that person, he or she. I bring them back, that person has to be released immediately. If now they abscond again and they go someplace else, I have to bring them back with your taxpayers' money, and they might be released a second time. So I could spend thousands of your dollars going to get people and bring them back with no consequence to that person, to your point. But in New York City, and if you want the articles, I'll show you, they're going to be giving out Mets tickets, gift cards to the defendants at their arraignment so they come back to court to answer their pleas.
Wouldn't Mets tickets prevent them from coming back?
Well, you notice that they didn't give them Yankee tickets. I see somebody wearing a Mets ticket and a Mets hat in the back.
I'm sorry, Mets are fine.
Okay, this means the court shall over ROR unless the court makes individualized determination of a flight risk. Factors relevant to the defendant's return to court, defendant's activity and history, defendant's charges, and on and on and on. The court may progress to a higher level of securing order only when a finding has been made with the court's explanation on the record or in writing. The defendant is entitled to counsel if cash bail is being requested. A bail review may be initiated arguing that the court did not use the least restrictive terms at every subsequent court appearance. Eliminated considerations for bail. And this is very important to every judge that's had the discretion and taken into account what he or she was faced with by the defendant and their past history. Cannot consider defendant's family ties and length of residency in the community or lack thereof. Cannot use the weight of the evidence. Cannot use the potential length of the sentence that may be imposed upon conviction. The court may no longer issue bench warrants immediately, must delay the issuance of a bench warrant for 48 hours. And I also believe that there's something in the law where the court clerks for each court has to make numerous attempts in that 48 hours to contact that person to ask them to come back to court, if I'm not mistaken. Additional reforms. This is where the real impact is to law enforcement, and where's our new district attorney? And to the district attorney. It's saying here on the second bullet, no more than 15 days after arraignment or any form or accusatory instrument, including felony complaints, must be turned over to the defense in 100% of the cases. This includes names and contact information of victims and witnesses. But let me just say this to you. For the district attorney, as I'm told by him in his office, for him to comply and us to comply, we have to get that there in less than 11 or 12 days. Because he has to have the right to go through it, be able to notify everybody, and get all of those things out. Now, if you go to the next bullet, previously, discovery took place in only 4% of the cases prior to these reforms. This is 100% of the cases. And here's it all gets compounded. If my cars are in the town of Haverstraw and they arrest somebody and a Haverstraw Town Police car comes and assists us, they have video cams in their car. Not only do we have to get all of our case records and send it to the DA's office, but now we have to contact the Haverstraw Police Department and say, did you have body cams? Did you have car cams? And we have to get that data and also extract it and send it on to the district attorney's office for he or she to evaluate. 2 minutes? I have to wrap this up because I guess we're coming to the end. But you can see the district attorneys in New York State said this is going to cost across the state about $100 million, and it's unfunded by the state of New York. Our Attorney General says, I support criminal justice reforms but the unfunded mandates is not being paid for, and she's going to have her own issues with that. Let me also say this, I guess on behalf of myself and all the chiefs here. No one's against reforms. Not everything that was done was wrong or bad in our opinion, but there are some things that are just over the top, and they're too severe for us to comply with them. And as the chief said, we can't get our drugs back from the state police lab in 15 days in order to make sure that they weren't, they're tested. So we go on and on with all kinds of restrictions. So on behalf of myself and the sheriffs around the state and the police chiefs, I thank you for this time.
Supervisor, I just want to get the DA-elect like 2 minutes to just address the group.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you.
Okay. And I also want to thank Chief Wilson for coming by and Captain Riley for coming by also.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. I know I only have a few moments, and let's talk about drug testing. 40 people in Rockland County in 2019 have died from overdoses. The New York State Police Lab cannot handle the volume of cases that will be presented. We have to stop the opioid crisis. We need to do that by effective prosecution. One of the unintended costs and consequences will be that we're going to have to reach out and undoubtedly get private labs at the taxpayers' expense to ensure that we can prosecute the cases and strike back at the opioid plague. The sheriff mentioned some statistics. I saw a report that in 2018, to give you real numbers, that over 2,700 arraignments were held. And I'm not telling you everybody went to jail who was arraigned, but I can tell you that between 89 and 90% of those 2,700 people must be released under the new bail reform. The third thing that was mentioned that I think is critical, if you happen to own property, the location of a crime, the defendant will have an opportunity to make an application to the court to go back and do a visit. Not only will that have consequences to law enforcement in terms of costs, but you're a homeowner. You don't want the burglar back in your house. You maybe receive notice, but who's going to pay for your lawyer if you want to go back in court and tell that judge, no, I don't want that person back in my house? And that's an unintended cost that anybody here that might be a victim of a crime, what are you going to do? You're going to let him back in your house? I think not. And I think that something should be done to defray the costs for the innocent people if the defendant wants to go back and see them. As said by the sheriff, many of these reforms are worthwhile, but they have to be funded. The 15 days is just too short a period of a time. It has to be extended. We also must make sure that we have protections for witnesses and victims of crime. It says the names have to be released and identifying information. In today's electronic age, give me your name, I'll find out where you live in a matter of hours. I think that we need to place the burden on the defendant for an articulable, factual basis why, far in advance of the trial, that they'll need the disclosure of certain witnesses and certain victims' names before the trial. I'm going to say thank you, Supervisor. I could go on and on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it from our presentation tonight.
Thank you, Chief. So we're running into the next meeting. What's going to happen is the police officials will be available in the rear, in the lobby, for take individual questions from members of the public who have questions. I want to wrap up this sort of information session just with a couple of points. This bill, again, no one is saying criminal justice reform is not needed. There are many things in New York's criminal justice system that needed reform, including cash bail system. What was done, and there's a reason it was tacked on to a budget bill, is that a bill that does not fix the system but breaks it is what passed. And what we're telling you, what our police officers are telling you, is that, and our DA and our sheriff, compliance with this law will make it less safe for residents and less safe for witnesses, and will cost an exorbitant sum of money to do so in a way that makes things less safe. And I think just a couple of brief examples. If someone was to produce child pornography and simultaneously fail to register as a sex offender after having already conducted a sexual act with a child, they'd be back on the streets the next day, regardless as to their risk of reoffense. If someone sold a gun to a child on a school grounds, that child had the gun on the property and then made a terroristic threat to their teacher, they'd be back in school the next day. If someone tortures animals, is running an animal fighting ring and torturing animals, they'll be back to supervise their business the next day. That is not the same thing as reforming a cash bail system. Our state representatives in this area voted for this bill. They also voted for the budget. We can't hold that against them. It was in the budget. It's already law. The only way we can get the changes needed to have a correct criminal justice reform is to have a hold on it when they first get into session. So we only have to deal with this system for the first week of January. It is law January 1st. January 8th, I believe, they're in session. So a moratorium on this bill, followed by a series of edits to it in the course of this session, in the way legislation should pass on its own, standing under its own weight, is what is appropriate. I ask everyone who lives in Orangetown to reach out to their state reps, to Senator Carlucci, to Assemblywoman Jaffe, and tell them, please, put a moratorium on it. Just hold it. Don't repeal it, just put a hold on it and see what could be fixed, since you didn't do the fixing before it became law. And the last thing is, this is going to have an impact the most in the most at-risk communities, in places that are poorer, that are higher minorities, because they are the folks that are going to witness the crime and then be intimidated by the person who is able to get away with tampering with a juror, hinder prosecution, and also resisting arrest. He can do all those things and still be free without bail and have the contact information of any witness. And the police will tell you it'll be very difficult to get witnesses to come forward in situations like that. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to the representatives of various police departments and to Sheriff Falco and to incoming DA Walsh. Does anyone have anything they want to add from the town board at this point? All right, so I'm going to move that we adjourn the police commission meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And again, there'll be availability for questions on a one-on-one basis in the back. Thank you very much. You can take questions in the back. Thank you.
Councilman Paul Valentine.
Here.
Councilman Jerry Vitari. Here. Supervisor Chris Day.
Here. Vanessa Baylor, please lead us in the pledge. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have a few brief announcements and then a presentation by Keith Kamir, am I pronouncing it right? Kamir, of the Rockland County Field Division of the U.S. Census to discuss the census. First announcement, the 19th of November, this upcoming meeting a week from today, is the continuation of a public hearing for a proposed or requested zone change on Route 303 for 576 Route 303 and adjoining properties. Then we have the continuation of the public hearing for the proposed TOD zoning ordinance for Pearl River at 8 p.m. that same day. And then on December 3rd, we have a scheduled public hearing for town code changes for regarding Habor Historic Area Board of Review going on then. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Keith to step up and give a few minutes to talk about 2020 and our decennial census.
That's correct.
All right, I used it right.
All right, I got my timer set to keep me on point. All right.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Keith Kamir. I am here in Rockland. I work for the U.S. Census Bureau. My role is a senior partnership specialist. What I want to do is be able to share with you all about the importance of what's happening at the 2020 census, what's coming up here very soon. And so just bear with me. If there's anybody has any questions, if I'm not making any sense, please go ahead and stop me. I'll try to be able to be clear or whatnot, but I try to cover everything as I can. If you want, otherwise hold your questions to the end
If we could do
time.
the hold the questions to the end as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then we'll have opportunity
So-
for that.
The U.S. Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency in the United States. We actually conduct over 130 surveys The most common are the ones listed up here. You get the demographic programs such as the decennial census, the American Community Survey, the current population survey. And the one that we're doing now is the 24th time we've done this in U.S. history. It started in 1790. Almost every single census survey that the Census Bureau conducts impacts the decennial survey and vice versa. The decennial survey is done in the years ending in 0. So this is one time every 10 years. So if you're familiar with the census, that would be why we're doing it next year. The goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. Okay? There are over 330 million people residing here in the United States. And I use the word residing on purpose because it's not focused on citizenship. It's focused on people living here. People live here for whatever reason there is. It could be education, it could be work, it could be family, it could be medical reasons. The point is that somebody lives here. And while living here, there are services and resources and benefits that are provided to all of us that matter to all of our communities. There are over 140 million housing units. That's a lot of houses and residences to count. It is mandated by the Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, and I was just saying it started in 1790. The two key functions is representation and funding. Every elected official has a district. Every assembly district, every congressperson, they have to represent people, not land. So they have to be able to know how many people they're representing in an area, okay? The other key function is funding. There's over $675 billion that the Congress has set aside for the next 10 years to be apportioned to the states on an annual basis. So it's 675 times 10, okay? It is safe, easy, and important, okay? It is safe. One of the key components is that private information is never published, including names, addresses, GPS coordinates, social security numbers, and telephone numbers. We will never ask for any banking information. We will not ask for financial contributions. There are political censuses that have been going around, and on the last page, you'll see a credit card donation of sorts. The U.S. Census Bureau is not a part of that, and we do not ask for a financial contribution, okay? The Census Bureau collects information. We are literally nothing but statistics. Our entire objective is to gain statistical data on geographic locations. So the personal information collected by the Census Bureau cannot be used against any respondents by any government agency or court. Doesn't matter who it is for any reason. Supreme Court of state or federal level cannot get your information through the Census Bureau. End of story, period. The Census Bureau employees are sworn to protect confidentiality for life. I personally had to take an oath of privacy that every single individual that I encounter cannot share that information, or I face up to 5 years in jail and a penalty of up to $250,000. It's a serious matter that we all take very seriously. Cybersecurity. This is the very first time that the census will be conducted electronically, and so cybersecurity is a massive concern. People are afraid to share their information electronically. We take very high precautions in this, and we want to make sure that the population knows this. That from the beginning, when a respondent answers to the end, when the data produces are released, data are encrypted, safe, and secure. Your information is then captured into an internal database that is only accessible by internal employees and is consistently being updated for technology protections. So I was saying it's easy. There's 4 key ways that anyone can do the census. There's the online version, which is the encouraged version. As of March 12th this year, you'll be able to start taking the census. By doing it, you could do it on your iPhone, your tablet, your laptop, your work computer if they allow it. If you don't have access to the computer, there are services around the county that are providing access, such as the libraries. We have 17 libraries in Rockland County. There'll be 15 that will provide access to the census through their resources. If there's an issue related to not being able to access the phone or you can't do it by paper, such as a language issue or some sort of disability, we have the ability to do it over the phone. There's going to be translators that can do it with you over the phone. There's the paper version. That will be provided in the second and third phase of the census. You'll start seeing marketing going out in March, and by April, you'll see the first option to do it by paper. If you don't do it at that point, you'll end up getting a personal visit by a census employee. Personally, unless it's somebody like FedEx or a pizza delivery, I don't want anybody knocking on my door, and I work for the census. So from a privacy standpoint, I can encourage people, please do it by online. It'll save money, it'll save time, and it'll keep people from knocking on your doors. The only things we really ask are your name, age, date of birth, race and origin, Hispanic origin, relationship to the people in the home, gender, tenure, operational questions such as the population count, the name, your phone number. And then we will never ask for, like I said, your social security number, money or donations, anything on behalf of a political party, or your full banking information or credit card information. We have 12 key languages that we do, but then there's an additional, a total of 59 languages plus English that we support. These are the ones that are available through the online mail and advertising. This is a breakdown of the timeline of what you'll see. So March 12th, people will be able to start responding online. The only place you want to go is 2020census.gov. You can see down to the bottom left-hand corner, this is 2020census.gov. Then a reminder letter. If you haven't responded, a reminder postcard. Then a reminder letter with the questionnaire. And then the people coming to your door. Jobs. We are actively hiring. This is the largest civilian mobilization in a peacetime effort that the federal government conducts. We're looking to hire over 500,000 people across the country. New York's goal is 121,000. I think last I checked, we're at about 40,000. So we are in a massive hiring effort. The website there, it's a simple process, only requirement, 18 years and older, U.S. citizen, and if you're a non-citizen who has a special language skill, we encourage people to apply. There is a waiver being granted to those as well. The pay in Rockland County is $18 an hour and 58 cents a mile for travel. Some key milestones, like I was saying, August it's already passed, statistics in the school program. You'll start seeing in January advertising campaigns beginning, then in March you'll see the 2020 group quarters count. That's where actual groups such as a retirement home, a hospital, a prison, a dormitory, those groups will be counted in a separate count, and then mid-March the public can begin responding. April 1st is Census Day. Census takers go door to door, and the goal is to get the results to the president on his desk by December 31st and be able to then release the data for Congress. Rockland County. This is what's called a response outreach area mapper. It is color-coded. The key for the color coding, each one of those color-coded areas is called a tract, a census tract. Everyone lives in a tract. The tract combines a grouping of homes and residences. So as you can see, they are rather large in geographic space. So this is the closest we come to a specific address. So if you were to go to this map and punch in your home address, you'll find your home address in a tract, but you will not be able to get actual data for your address. So when it comes to your personal information, nobody is going to come to your home and say, okay, 15 Main Street is where Mary Smith lives, and she is 22 years old and she's Hispanic. That information will not be provided through this. We cannot go in and get your personal information. All we literally do is get statistics for your area. So if you clicked on one of these areas, all you would get is numbers based off of demographics. The color coding is instrumental because the darker areas are the hard to count areas. So a hard to count area means that you're not getting access to the community at large. The hardest to count area is Spring Valley and Muncie, Nanuet. In Spring Valley, it is the lowest response rate, estimated about 64%. That means when it comes to counting children, counting resources, counting the allocation of funds in different programs, they're only able to access roughly, in general terms, 64% of what they would otherwise gain. Children, however, have a 5% discrepancy, so therefore you're looking at about 59% count. So if you think about the school district, they're only counting 590 for every 1,000 kids. So if you're trying to hire police, hiring teachers, paying for all the resources, school lunch programs, they can only afford and give based off of the numbers that are given or that are collected. So at a disadvantage, those children are already set up for disadvantage, and it's for 10 years. So the data is 10 years worth of information that we collect and we're stuck with. So if you have a child or know of a child that's going to school in a public system, they're not going to be able to have access to the same resources in those hard to count areas where the easier to count areas are. Meanwhile, the easier to count areas, that's not permanent. People move in and out of those areas, right? So they also have to then carry the burden for all the other areas that are not being able to be counted properly. So the key is to be able to ensure people understand the importance of the census and why the census matters to every one of us. Everyone counts. It's kind of like when you're getting into the voting booth, like last week. If you didn't vote, don't complain. So if you don't get counted, don't complain. We don't have the resources. So at the end of the day, my job, my goal is to connect with all the different communities, all the different organizations, to be able to share this message, to be able to help everyone in our area and all of our county know this matters. It impacts every one of us for 10 years. There's over 100 different programs that are funded by the U.S. Census on a statewide level, and New York lost over 68,000 people from New York to Florida alone in the last year. Over 1 million have moved from New York to Florida in the last 10 years. So we're slated to lose one, if not two, congressional seats. And the idea is how we're going to be properly represented and how we're going to be able to properly fund all the different programs in municipalities in a way that makes sense for all of us in an accurate form. We're on all the social media sites, so we encourage people to go there. There's great information, lots of data. We welcome the engagement and sharing of the information. And there you go. That's me. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
Does anyone have any questions? No,
Yeah.
I'll entertain a brief question just as he's leaving, so yeah.
Thank you for what you do. I strongly believe in the census, but I do have a question about individual level data, because you say the only data that's really available on that mapper is by enumeration district. Individual level data is collected.
Correct.
It's available to someone.
It's available internally, only for statistical data, and then it's released under what's called Title 13. Title 13 is a law that was put in place, which is an essential title, a law that was put in place to protect your personal information, that your data, your personal information cannot and will not be shared under any circumstances for 72 years through the U.S. Census Bureau.
Public, but, and you're saying internally, but
No, it cannot leave the Census Bureau for any reason.
my second just follow-up question is like your presentation sort of presupposes that we all have the same risk at providing information, and that isn't actually the case. So I wonder what the Census Bureau is doing to mitigate risk for communities who maybe feel.
Sharing the message and finding trusted voices. We have languages, we have different resources, we have people like myself getting into every community possible of all different languages and backgrounds to be able to ensure that we have proper communication and to be able to point them in the right directions. You know, knowledge is power. So the website for Census is thorough with amazing data and resources and tons of information to be able to share the truth. And the key is the truth. And the truth is on the website. And it is legitimized and it is a factual thing. Yes. We have a homeless count. Good question. It's part of the group count efforts. In the warm climates, we will actually go out with the sheriffs in different departments and different police forces, like around 11, 12 o'clock at night and count in those dark areas, you know, under bridges and things. And then we also work with the shelters. So in our area, we're going to have the coldest, it's like the coldest night of the year. And so what will happen is we work with those like Catholic Charities or Salvation Armies in different areas and be able to get a head count. Okay?
Thank you very much for coming in. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
She's asking about the largely Orthodox and Jewish community in the Muncie area. And what we're doing is I have a partner like myself. He is an Orthodox Jewish individual, and he is partnering with Rabbi Horowitz of the Community Outreach Center, and they have established what's called the Complete Count Committee, and they are actively working, just did a job recruiting effort, and they are going to be engaging their community in a massive effort with language skills, as well as getting the message out in different media formats, and then we'll be able to just go door to door. So
Thank you. No,
that's
I'm just
the
gonna
follow-up, so.
If anyone has, just because
Yeah.
we're going to have to get it, you can stick around for 5 more minutes outside? Okay, if anyone has any more specific questions about the census, if you want, we're not going to get to public comment for a few minutes anyway. We have workshop, so if you want to step out into the back and talk one-on-one.
To help bring me into your organizations and communities, I'd be happy to share that information as well if you would like me to come and speak or educate more about your different areas you serve.
Great. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it. Weak on the applause, but okay. If you're going to clap, clap. That way it doesn't seem weak. All right, so we have, again, the format for the meeting is we have a discussion item. This time we do have one. Then we workshop, which means we go through and talk about everything that we might vote on or may not in the course of this meeting. And then we go back, have public comment on those items and anything else you want to talk about, and then vote. So the first item under discussion, gentlemen, is we were contacted by the Daniel School District, and you got an email, I think, about this today. They want to discuss some real estate appraisal issues related to Pfizer property, IRG. In order to meet with them as a group, it is legally a meeting. Therefore, we need to make sure, one, that everyone can make it, and two, that we want to do it on this time. They've asked if we can go on Tuesday the 19th at 5:30, which is around the time of their meeting. to sit down as a big, I guess, combo committee of enlightened elders to discuss this. So does that work for everyone, that time, the 19th at 5:30, or at least 3 of us?
We meeting here or there?
This would be at Nanuet School District. We would go for probably a half hour and come back.
Oh, yeah, because we have a meeting.
Yeah, we have a meeting at 7:30 that night, so this would be, we'd probably have maybe a half hour there and come back. Oh, okay, you're coming back that afternoon, so it's 1, 2, you're good, maybe? Okay, so we have at least 3, so we'll tell them we're good. We're gonna have to add a voting resolution, and if anyone reminds me with a hand wave to set that meeting so we can notice it, because it's,
Okay.
again, it's legally a meeting, it's just not written in the agenda, so I wasn't sure if it was gonna happen or not. Okay, next we have, in the workshop session, we're gonna have a public comment, and then we're going to have opening of the public hearing related to the budget, a continuation of it. Then we'll be closing that public hearing, and then we'll be adopting and approving adjustments to the budget, and the budget is itself along with the approved adjustments. These adjustments include, at this time, as published in the attachments, keeping Broad Acres open. It includes putting the code enforcement position back in. It includes putting the Justice Court position back in as part of a relation, partially due to this, again, this law that's gone through. We don't want to take that position away. We already put in adjustments to add 2 police officers back in along with that law as well. And there's a couple of other minor edits, but those are the significant things for the previously put it in the agenda budget adjustments. And also, we're going to increase some spend on the fund balance, which will then lower the tax increase, was the last thing. Goes from about 4.1 something to about 3.7 something as a result of that. Then we have the resolution to approve a contract for library services. And then we have here a petition. Last meeting, we adopted a law, was it 2 meetings ago now, I forget, to modify our PAC zone. There had been a previous applicant under the original PAC zone law that we approved everything for, and now they are back with a petition under the new version of the law. I want to ask maybe if Brian Quinn, the attorney for the applicant Galway Bay, if you could just summarize, real brief, 1 minute, tell the board what's going on here, because you'll probably do better than me.
Sure, you're probably asking, why am I back here again? But
You just like us.
yeah.
Is what it is.
At the last meeting, what you did was you approved the amendment to the law. Now, with that amendment in place, we're coming back in. You already reviewed the project about a year ago, and you had done the approvals that this board was authorized to do. And now you can also now approve the modifications to the bulk regulations under the new law. So this is a petition that's been filed. I think the only thing you're going to do tonight is to set the public hearing for December 17th, I believe, at which point we'll make a full presentation that evening during the public meeting.
Exactly.
Yep.
So essentially, it's the same thing they did last time, but with the adjustments that are now able to be done by us under the new law.
It's the
that
same
they
exact
don't hang up
project
at the
from a year
ZBA.
ago. Same exactly.
So what we will be doing tonight is, again, we will be accepting the petition, circulating it, and then setting a public hearing for the 17th of December. And that's it related to this particular
Project.
Any questions for Brian? I mean, again, we've touched on this for the last 2 years, basically. So thank you, Brian.
Thank
can
you.
sit down. And now you can tell them that you earned your money tonight because you got up and talked, right? It's good. It is, though. All right, is there someone who can sort of throw this, Anthony, is there Anthony here, or Amanda, or someone who can get on the computer and put up the information about just click the PowerPoint for the land sale LOI? Just got an information, it's just one slide. Should be open already, the PowerPoint icon down there at the taskbar. All right, just hit presentation mode, and if you could stay there. I don't have the remote. I don't know why I don't have the remote. Down to the bottom. To the right. There we go. Nope, a little more left. That right there. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so on the agenda tonight is a resolution that will authorize the signing of a non-binding letter of intent related to a land sale of property at RPC. This is a maximum 240-day study period. The base amount is 180, but there's provides for extensions with a contract that will be drafted within 15 days of the LOI being signed. $50,000 refundable deposit immediately, another $50,000 at the end of the study period, which both become non-refundable at that time. Essentially, Riverlink Hotels, which is a hotel developer, is requested to purchase this property, which will show on a map, but essentially it's right across from the Bethany Maratoma Church and the National Guard Armory area between Old Orangeburg Road and Orangeburg Road. They want to put in 2 100-unit suite types, so sort of extended stay style, but not that brand, the Hilton brand actually, buildings with a restaurant pad as well. Their purchase price that we talked about in the negotiation process, because this was a negotiation under executive session, obviously, it would be $1.6 million cash offer, which is approximately close to our normal value for vacant land there. They also, however, are putting in approximately $1 million worth of infrastructure improvements along with that purchase price. So we will get $1.6 million of cash. They will improve that roadway, that connector road, to make it a two-way road with a traffic light, and also run sewer from basically Leicester all the way over to that site, which brings sewer to our sewers to the RPC site. Currently, the only sewers at RPC are owned by the state, by the Office of Mental Health, and they won't let us use them for anything. So future things that get done at RPC now, including the community center, we'll be able to use our own sewer system for the result of that. That's about a $1 million worth of money if we were to do it ourselves. It's cheaper for them because of the rules for construction. And that's plus the $1.6 million cash. Obviously, the intent, as I'm sure we've talked about in the past for land sales, is to take this $1.6 million and put it towards the construction of our community center, which is at RPC. The price for that is about $5 million for the building, another $1 million for site prep. And just as an update on that, we should be able to go out for bid for contract sometime this winter at the latest, between January and February. It's conceivable it could be December, but design phase is almost complete. And then if you click one time, and we'll go to the map to show more clear, this is what the parcels are. It's parcel 3 and parcel 7. So that area around that connector road, and you have the satellite showing it as well. So that's, the line's a little different on this map than what it actually is. It's slightly more to the left, so that's why it's 15 acres as opposed to 11 acres, but that's the way the map was originally drawn up. So that general vicinity there, a lot of the acreage isn't actually buildable because of some water issues in terms of wetlands, but the space that is will have the hotel on it. They will, of course, apply for pilots and such, but we're talking about a significant tax benefit as well in the out years beyond the initial cash purchase price. So this LOI is, again, non-binding at this time. It only becomes binding after the completion of the contract is written up and then a completion of study period, which require further votes from the town board. So tonight is just to let us start the non-binding process. Any questions from the board on this? No, we've talked in executive session. No? Okay, thank you. Okay, you can exit out, Amanda, thank you. You can yell at IT for making you have to do that. All right, next. Next, number 10 is a resolution to approve a retainer agreement for Fierick Nugent McCartney for outside counsel related to a deposition for a town employee due to potential conflict of interest for a lawsuit that we have been sued under. So it's just a different
There's
attorney.
conflict with the town's outside counsel representing that person and the town, that's all, it's not a...
Yeah, it's not, it's just this person was not,
Didn't have a conflict.
didn't have a, there's a potential conflict if the same attorney that represents the town represents this employee and the town, so we need a separate outside counsel for this employee. Okay. Next, to number 11 is reclassifying employee Matt Lenahan to a different grade based on the results of a desk audit. Then number 12 is to set a public hearing and consider approval of the Pearl River Fire District map for December 17th at 8 p.m. Then 13 is to award bid construction of curb and sidewalks and ramps on Convent Road in Blauvelt. This is the sidewalk we talked about. Then Jim Dean's done a lot of good work with this. The Orangeburg Road median that currently has a lot of very substantial but also not very beautiful rocks in it will soon have a lot of very nice looking landscaping and trees, assuming we vote for this, and will be funded under the same budget line. We increased our tree planting budget earlier in the year. So we'll be able to put a nice entryway for Orangetown at the exit ramp area for the Palisades. And that was a difficult one because of the water mains and the gas lines and whether the root system would cause issue. It took a lot of work, so I don't want to understate the effort that he put in, Jim Dean did. Resolution to approve assistance for the 2019 Orangeburg Fire Department Holiday Parade on the 14th of December, 6 to 10 p.m. Resolution to approve assistance for the 2019 South Orangetown Holiday Walk and Tree Lighting at the Mance Barn in Tapan on Saturday, December 7th, 3 to 7 p.m. Great newer event in town. Then we have another resolution to approve assistance for that, which is this is for the portable toilets. The other one was for other items. Then we have a lend aid for Sunrise Day Camp's Sunrise Walks event, which occurred already, but we have informally approved and now are formally approving. Then 2019 Share Christmas and the Holidays, the Christmas event for the Pearl River side of town on December 6th, Friday. It's another lend assistance for that one. This is for the Showmobile. And then we have number 20, adjustment to our current 2019 budget based on changes in actual spend versus projected spend for the risk insurance budget line, then the audit with pay vouchers, and then adjournment. Are there any questions from the town board on the agenda or any item I've talked about, or anything generally in life at all? No? Okay, so next then, I'm going to ask for a motion to open public comment. Is there a motion for the public comment? A motion from Councilman Valentine, second from Councilman Divney. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to get through the general public comment, and then we'll go to the public hearing on the budget after that. Public comment rules, 3 minutes. When its bell goes off, you have to stop, not mid-sentence, but wrap up in that sentence. It's not a back-and-forth discussion with us. During public comment, we will answer your questions, but at the end of the public comment session, unless it's just one of those, very obvious needs to be answered type things, we may bend the rules on that case. You can yield your time to someone else. You cannot get back up a second time. I would recommend, if you want to talk about the budget, you save it for the hearing portion because it's on the record in the hearing then, but you can talk about any subject you'd like or read the dictionary if you want to for 3 minutes. So the first, we'll go by sign-ins first, then hand raises. Is Mark Pessin here? Mark? No, okay, that's one down. Claudette Green? Claudette Green's here? They're both here, okay. Okay, Mark Pessin, I assume, is the gentleman that walked in. Yeah, that was the time for public comment. You have 3 minutes. I just went through the rules. I don't know if you could hear it out there, but. You can talk about whatever you like at the podium. You could talk about any subject in the world you prefer to talk about.
Give your name and the town you're from.
Okay, my name is Mark Pessin. I'm actually from the town of Ramapo, but I have lived in Rockland for over 30 years, so.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so when I was young, I always thought that bail was something that you had to raise so that you guarantee you show up in court. But everything I heard today was bail is keeping criminals off the streets and from committing, crimes. Second thing, and I guess as a young boy, I was very naive because I always thought there was a presumption of innocence. In other words, you're innocent until proven guilty, even if you did something. And that's another thing that I was always taught, that we believe in rehabilitation and forgiveness, both as a Judeo-Christian society and also, on the basis of, our prison system. Prisons was set up to give people another chance, rehabilitation, reformatories or whatever you want to call them. The whole discussion was so punitive, and I think that really we, as a society, we need to think about, we have now 25% of the world's prisoners in the freest country in the world. 5% of the population, 25% of the world's prisoners. There are too many people in prison. Most of them really, people who committed small drug offenses or, relatively minor things. Most of those misdemeanors that are on that bail list are really minor crimes. So what do? We're all concerned about crime. But I'm going to suggest some other things. What about all the mental health issues in prison? If we dealt with the issue of mental health, spent money on that rather than incarceration and hiring more cops, I think we would be better off. Or dealing with the issues of poverty, or dealing with the issues of drug addiction. getting more treatment centers. That would be a way of, reducing crime. Because if we prevent, people from being in a position to commit crimes, and then there's the whole issue of when people get out, they're all getting out. All of those people that we, deny bail to for cash reasons, they're all getting out. And what are we going to do when they get out? We have to have a more humane way of treating people who come out. For example, the person who comes out, they can't get a job because in New York State, we haven't banned the box, which has been passed everywhere. New Jersey has banned the box, but they also have no bail, no cash bail, and it seems to be working fine. So, I think we really need to think of a different way, not so punitive, but more rehabilitative and more humane way of dealing with people who are committing crimes in our, communities. With that, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Claudette Green, I assume, is one of the people that just walked in. Claudette Green? No? You're good? Okay, thank you. Mike Mandel, Pearl River.
Good evening, Supervisor Day, members of the Town Board. My name is Michael Mandel, resident of Pearl River. At the October 22nd Town Board meeting, a presentation was made concerning the Cherry Brook flooding problem, and the July 17, 2005 meeting was mentioned. I attended that meeting and informed the board that the south end of Cherry Brook Park was flooded, that the floodwaters due to debris in the park were a couple of feet above the fence separating the park from the Meyer Oval, and had burst, trapping a man in a vehicle who was helped out by neighbors. Floodwaters were almost halfway up Grove Street. Raw sewage was backing up to the homes on Grove Street. One house with a basement garage had been flooded. And the couple who were there that night complaining about it, this was the third or fourth time they had complained to the supervisor, then Kleiner, about it, and nothing had happened. I have empathy for those who are still suffering flooding, but the installation of the 60-inch main in Cherry Brook Park at the southern end and other construction has corrected the problem for us, and we do not want to repeat. Historically, when the town approved the construction of Meyer Oval, the condominiums or the apartments there, back in I don't know when, and the elimination of Jordan's Pond, this was the start of the whole problem of the flooding in town, and they continued to let construction go on. Okay, but we will not stand for another repeat of this. I know we have problems up at the north end, but they have to correct it without destroying our property at the south end. We went through this, and that flooding was going on in the 80s and 90s. This didn't start after the year 2000. And maybe the Crooked Hill detention pond could be enlarged. Maybe the culvert under Gilbert Avenue should be looked at. There are other things that can be done that would remediate it at the upper end rather than flooding our place again on the southern end of the park. And if the original plan had been fully implemented, because only parts were, we would not have this problem today. And the only reason something was finally done was due to the death of Michael Shortell, who I knew and I worked with. That's the only reason that anything was done by the supervisor at that point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Esther Baitler.
Good evening, Supervisor Day, Town Board members. Hi, my name is Esther Ann Baylor, and I'm a very unique consumer who lives in Spark Hill. Tonight, I want to congratulate Teresa Kenny on becoming one of the new town supervisors. I can only tell you that she is great because of her brother. Her brother Mike works at Venture Academy, and I trained him when we lived at Venture East in New City. He always used to say, Esther, why are you so quiet? I said, Mike, I'm working to train you. Congratulations, Teresa.
Thank you, Esther. And we also extend congratulations to incoming Supervisor-elect Kenny as well. Anyone else who would like to speak? Again, public comment, not public hearing. Yes, sorry.
Good evening, members
Go
of
ahead.
the board. The issues that I'd like to talk about tonight is the issue about the cloudy water and the issue with Suez. My water has been cloudy now, I guess, for about 2 weeks. I didn't have the smell. But what I really resent with Suez is that we never received any robocalls from them, that this issue was there, but you shouldn't worry about it. Because I went out and bought extra Poland Spring water. I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, I think the issue has not been resolved. And to this date, Suez has been very silent about this issue. And maybe the town board could call upon them to either send out robocalls or a letter to the residents about this issue. The other issue is about streetlights. Palisades has 2 streetlights out that are very important to the areas. One is right outside the old Palisades Elementary School, and the other one is at the corner of Oak Tree Road and Closter Road, both these lights are on the westbound side of Oak Tree Road. It's actually pitch black in the areas. Coming along here now on Orangeburg Road, there are no less than 6 lights out along Orangeburg Road between 303 and Dutch Hill Road. These lights, especially in Palisades, have to be changed ASAP because there were people walking from 9W along the road. We have our sidewalks now, so people do use them. And before there's a fatality. And I don't know who the responsible person is to make the change or to report this to, but I don't want it to be passed from one person to another until something serious happens over there. And to the gentleman that spoke before, pleading for the, those who like to commit crime, if you take a look at some of the issues that the presenters made at the 7 o'clock meeting, I'm absolutely appalled that our state legislators, Colucci and Ellen Jaffe, would move to let this go through, and nobody even knew anything about it. I think a lot of people, I feel, think that it's just a New York City issue, but it's really a statewide issue, because the other idiot that runs Manhattan, de Blasio, wants to give them tickets to go to the Met game to show up. Now, that's a class act right there. So I think we have to make a strong movement to call our elected officials and tell them we're outraged at them. If Colucci wants to run for the Senate, we should hold out and work against him. And I think it's time for the Republicans to put up a candidate to run against Andrew Cuomo before he completely destroys this state. A great state to live in, but you know what? If I could, I'd get out of here tomorrow.
Thank you, Eileen. We have some other hands back. Yes, ma'am. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Yelpert from Piermont, and I wanted to take a moment to actually focus on why we need these criminal justice reforms. So we live in a country where people are presumed innocent until they're found guilty in a court of law. We live in a country where supposedly all men are equal under the law. But yet the reality is that right now we have a system that treats people as guilty because they're too poor to afford bail. And our criminal justice system is most certainly not colorblind. Consider this, although blacks and whites sell and use drugs at roughly the same rates, in New York State, 94% of those imprisoned for a drug offense are people of color. 94%. If we're going to talk about criminal justice reforms, then we need to talk not just about the monetary costs, but also about the families whose lives are affected by it. Khalif Browder was arrested in the spring of 2010 at the age of 16. He was a year younger than my son. He was arrested for a robbery, stealing a backpack that he insisted he had not committed. Eventually, all charges against him were dropped, and he was released from jail. Because he maintained his innocence and refused to take a plea bargain, he spent more than 1,000 days on Rikers Island waiting for a trial that never happened. During that time, Khalif was abused by inmates in Rikers. During that time, he was starved and beaten by prison guards. During that time, he spent 2 years in solitary confinement where he was damaged physically, emotionally, and spiritually beyond repair, and he attempted to end his life several times. Eventually, 2 years after his release from prison, Khalif succeeded in killing himself. As a mother, I do not want to see another kid suffer the way Khalif did because these reforms are too hard to implement. These reforms are not just an inconvenience, they're an essential part of making sure that justice is carried out. And I hope that the police officers, the sheriff, the DA, and the other elected officials will join me in making sure that we enforce these new, much-needed criminal justice laws.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in general public comment? Again, not the budget hearing, general public comment. Okay, thank you. Oh, yep, one more. Whenever you're ready.
Vincent Lupi, Lawville, New York, 106 Spruce Street, if you need the street.
We don't, but thank you.
It's about Aloof, ongoing issue. Now that they've been found guilty on, I believe, 5 accounts, I was wondering if the town has the authority and will they, if they do have the authority, to give injunctive relief to the problem that's ongoing. It's still happening, even though they were found guilty.
Thank you. We'll ask that once we wrap up. Anyone else for public comment, general topics? No? All right, motion to close public comment from Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, just a couple of things, then I'll turn it over to the gentleman to my left and right. Eileen, Suez, one I might make clear for everyone, the town doesn't have any authority over which I know you know, but for everyone else, we don't have authority over the public utilities. The state commission does. Senator Carlucci, for his faults in the bill that we were just discussing earlier, is actually organizing something to try to get Suez to focus a little more on this issue at the state level, which is where the authority over the utilities are. So I would encourage everyone to reach out to his office and follow his instructions on that one. Streetlights, you've got the right people in the room for that. Assuming they are on telephone poles, we will make sure that they get dealt with. I saw Amanda taking notes already. The way streetlights work in Orangetown is the town owns the ones that are attached to telephone poles, and O&R owns the ones that are just all metal. So if you have an O&R problem, it's a metal pole, call O&R. If not, call the town, the supervisor's office, or the highway department, and we'll take care of it. Bail reform, again, we all agree that we need reform, but it's the law. It's not about being too lazy to comply. It's about the law's actual content not being good enough and needing fixing to properly reform our bail system. Vincent, thank you for asking the question about Aloof. We did get 5 convictions. The first convictions of Aloof were odors in their existence. I can't get into the details of what next steps will be on enforcement. I can say, however, that a combination of there having been a decision in a court of law that they are responsible for those odors, and the ruling of the ZBA that their building permits and their attempts to comply with the performance standards were not valid. They do not comply with the performance standards, do open up other avenues, and I would expect to see continued and improved enforcement on that. I, again, can't unfortunately not get more detail on that because it could jeopardize those enforcement efforts, but we will continue to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that everyone is following the law in Orangetown, regardless as to whether they're a company or an individual, especially when they're impacting neighbors. And that was a big step, and I want to thank our town attorney department and Barbara Gianta there for doing that, and our building department for their enforcement. I don't think there were any other specific questions that were asked. So anyone else want to comment on any of the public comments? No? Gentlemen? No? Okay, very good. All right, thank you. So our first item on the agenda is the continuation of the public hearing on the budget. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Troy, all in favor? Aye. Okay. So we do have a few folks signed in to talk about it. Again, there were some edits. And just to sum up, for those that weren't here previously, I know that there's a very interesting petition going around town that takes some of the words that I said and spins it into another thing when it comes to the budget, about the 80% of the cost is personnel, and how dare the town of Orangetown do that. The issue with personnel costs is a statewide issue, especially in Rockland County and Lower Westchester. Most of that is due to the system of negotiations that is founded by the state of New York and enforced by laws created through the state of New York. The police negotiation includes binding arbitration and will only compare, thanks to the Rockland County Police Act, to adjacent municipalities, the higher paid Ramapo and Clarkstown police departments. So the town is very difficult for us to get anything resembling a decent contract with police that washes out for taxpayers, number one, because all they have to do is take us to arbitration and we'll get a pay raise and we'll have to pay arbitration expenses. The other unions have similar restrictive rules and it's made very difficult to negotiate with purely the benefit of the taxpayer in mind. There are other costs that go up on an annual basis from the state, like cost of insurance, cost of retirement, in the double-digit percentages each year that have nothing, again, to do with the town of Orangetown or town of Clarkstown or town of Ramapo. The town of Orangetown has done a great job prior to my time in office and since then of staying under the tax cap in every year. Last year, in my first budget, we cut taxes and we were the most underneath the tax cap that Orangetown has ever been since it's been in existence. We've reduced many positions in order to try to comply with the tax cap and to make sure our tax burden doesn't increase. And as a share of taxes, Orangetown's share of your tax bill is much lower than other municipalities' share of their tax bill. So in Orangetown, we are responsible for between 30 and 40% of your tax bill, whereas in Clarkstown, the town is responsible for close to 50%. And it's not because Clarkstown schools are cheaper to pay for than Orangetown schools. They're actually more expensive. So this town has done a good job of staying under budget and making sure that we focus on that. This year's budget, as proposed, would have had a 4.17% increase before the base proportion adjustment on individual homeowners on average. It has now been down to about 3.7 change percent due to some edits that were put into it. That is under the tax cap and is in line with the same budget that was put in the last year of the Stewart administration. So, and again, on the heels of cutting taxes the year prior. There are pay raises included in the budget still. I put those in specifically to bring the pay closer in line with the current pay of elected officials in the area so that people, especially the supervisor position, do not need to have a second income or have any desire for a second income when they're there. And they still result in our town officials, even after these raises are put in, being usually the fourth highest paid out of 5 towns for all elected officials in the county. We're not going from number 4 to number 3 or 2 or 1. We're going from a distant 4 to a less distant 4. And the first raises that have occurred of any significance in a decade. So they account for, I'll add, about 0.01% of the budget or something like that. So we'll now take the public comment portion for the preliminary budget. I do have a few sign-ins. The only difference between this and the general public comment rules is, one, you get a couple more minutes if you feel the need to make use of it. As I try to reset the timer to 5 minutes. And enter, enter, enter. It's a complicated timer. And 2, I would ask you to restrict your comments to the item at hand, which is the budget, not to any topic in the world. So the first person to sign in is Meredith Wisner, I think it is, unless it's a D at the end. Wisner? Wisner. Okay, Wisner. And also, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but also in the edits, the code enforcement position that was removed, which would have left the, I see you put building inspector. Code enforcement position that was removed would have brought us back to 2019 levels, because we had added one in between the 2 budgets, is now back in the budget as well. So we're back up +1 over the 2019 budget. Go ahead.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Meredith Wisner. I'm a South Nyack resident. I own a home there. I'm here tonight to register my disbelief for, I guess, a slightly less increased tax rate from 4.17 to 3.7. I think it's extremely high, especially when you consider that 80% of our taxes go to salaries. It's no wonder that we don't have plowed roads on Ross Avenue, or there are potholes that have actually destroyed my suspension. My husband and I both make under $100,000 a year, and we live in South Nyack, probably some of the highest taxes in this town. He's a teacher, I'm a librarian. We are the 5th highest paying town in New York State. We rank number 3 for police departments. Attracting good people to come here and work for us shouldn't really be our number 1 priority. People who live in this town should be wanting to work in this town. But quite frankly, if taxes keep going up in this way, I won't live in this town. One of the arguments that I've heard from Mr. Day is that that he's eliminated services to our community in order to keep us under the tax cap. That doesn't really seem like a boon to me. We need services here. The cost of healthcare, it's going up for all of us. So when you raise taxes, I have to figure out how I'm going to pay for things like healthcare. Another argument I've heard is that Tom Kleiner did it 14 years ago. Well, I don't care what happened 14 years ago. I care what's happening now. So I'd really like to hear from you a little more about, like, you're considering real people like me who make under $100,000 and what it's like for us to have our taxes raised in this way.
Great, thank you. I'll be happy to respond to that real quick before the next person comes up. First of all, one, Jim, do we plow the roads or do the roads in South Nyack? No. So that's your village board you're going to want to go to. The South Nyack Village Board handles the roads in South Nyack. And the police department as well. So I think what's coming from here, based on what I've read and what you said, is just maybe a little bit of a lack of understanding of what local government does what, okay? And I don't mean to insult you, but most people don't know, okay? And I'm about to be a private citizen in January. I won't see a dime of any of these pay raises. Frankly, it's not worth the headache at this point, the amount of headache I've gotten from it, but whatever. Our town does not plow the roads in South Nyack, the village board does. The reason your taxes are so high in South Nyack specifically because there's a layer of village tax on top of the town tax, on top of the county tax, on top of all the other taxes, the school taxes. So if you have concerns about your roads in South Nyack, the South Nyack Village Board meets, I don't know their schedule, but around the same frequency as we do, okay? The question about Supervisor Day said he's cut many services to stay under the tax cap. That's not what I said. I said we've reduced positions and we maintain an equal or better level of services by increasing technological investment. We have not had any issues whatsoever with reduction in service. And in fact, we have one of, if not the highest rated highway departments in the entire state of New York. When it comes to the personnel costs, yes, we are a very highly paid police department. As I said, we are bound by New York state law to only compare under binding arbitration with the two highest paid police departments in the state, Ramapo and Clarkstown. And we have no choice but to do that due to sins of the past, maybe folks like the Kleiner administration, but that election's over, so it doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to say is the 80% figure, which is the cost of personnel, healthcare as well, that's a fact that we have to deal with because of the structure here in the lower Hudson Valley. And it's a terrible burden for the people of Orangetown and of Rockland County. And anyone who's saying that they can go to New City or to Orangeburg or to Ramapo or to Stony Point and fix the problem of the structural issues that come with insurance costs, you say your insurance costs go up here, so do mine, personally. So does the rest of the towns. But if the town's insurance costs go up 10% a year, how are you going to make up that 10% without either cutting personnel or raising taxes? If you can't actually negotiate lower salaries with your employees because of the structure of our union negotiation system in New York. There is literally a dead end being forced by Albany. So there's layers of government to be spoken to here. After this hearing is over, I'd recommend you go to your South Nyack Village Board to talk about the roads that aren't being plowed or paved in Nyack. And then I'd also recommend you write your state representatives about reforming New York state law related to collective bargaining and related to police, the Rockland County Police Act. If you want to see salaries decrease for our employees, it's the only way it will ever happen, unless you just think the union's going to come in and say, give us a pay cut, please, because that's the only way it's going to happen. So those are the two levels of government that would be very good to talk to. I'm going to be talking to them. I've been talking to them since I've been supervisor, and I'll keep talking to them in January when I'm not. But putting it on these folks up here who have been complying with the law that was an unfunded mandate of increase your costs, but you have to cap the tax cap, which we've met easily every year, is not really reasonable. And it also twists, if you're twisting my words that much, you're twisting the reading of the law as much as well. That's what I would say. We have anyone from, let's see, next comment is Tonya? Tamara Aldrich.
I'm Tamara, and I'm from the village of Nyack, and I am the one that helped write the wonky petition that I actually think has a lot of facts in it. I am very, very pleased to hear that you're bringing back the code enforcement officer, and I'm also pleased to hear that the percentage raised for the tax is coming down. I still personally am concerned for, not as much for myself, but some of my neighbors who make a lower income, that these costs are still going to force them out of their homes. Like I said, I'm glad it's lower, but it's still a lot. Taxes are already high in New York overall. We pay village taxes, as you said. But really what I came to do is deliver the petition. I'm assuming that some of you have already seen it online, but I brought hard copies with the names of people who signed who are actually in Orangetown. We got over 100 signatures from people outside of Orangetown, many of them from the other counties here in the or other towns here in the county. And one of the reasons I thought it was interesting that we got so many signatures from towns outside of Orangetown and Rockland is that I think there is a precedent. You keep saying, you know, Holman is making this much, or this person is making this much, but every time that one person is saying, well, I need to make what the other guy is making, it just keeps going up and up. So I just worry about the domino continuing to fall. So I'm going to give you guys a copy of the petition.
Thank you. Suzanne Holman.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Holman. I'm from South Nyack. And I just wanted to also voice my concern about this incredibly high tax rate. You know, I think one of the things that makes our town special is the diversity. And increasing taxes at this rate, this high, it's going to force people out of the town. And it's going to make our town more of a consolidated, wealthy hamlet and really rob us of the people that mean a lot to the community. And when I see a nearly 40% raise, it speaks to me not of a democracy, but more of a failed state, honestly. I mean, when do you see a 40% raise for anyone? I mean, that's crazy. So I'd like to see more accountability, more oversight. The reason to attract a good town supervisor, you know, that we need to be competitive with towns like Ramapo, but do we really need a supervisor who's going to the highest bidder? Or who's comfortable with taxing their neighbors to increase their personal wealth? We say $110,000 isn't enough to live on, but then somehow we expect our teachers and librarians and everyone else to live on it, and to increase their taxes to pay for it. That seems crazy to me. We want a supervisor who's going to love the town and the people in it. So please reject this exorbitant tax hike and provide better transparency of where the $77 million annual budget is allocated. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I will say that I'm pretty sure it's been transparent, and I know that I love the town, and I was being paid $109,000, and I won't be seeing $150,000. And I know that both the candidates for supervisor love the town, and they didn't know whether they get the pay raise or not. So, is there anyone else here for public comment on the budget? Great. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Councilman Troy, second by Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item then is we just did number 4, and now we're motion to adopt with the adjustments as referenced the 2020 budget. Do I have a motion on that, or we want to discuss it? Are we good?
I put it out there, I'm not voting for the raises, I said that.
Okay, the raises are in the budget, so you're gonna vote for the budget, or they're already in there, so you can vote against the budget, or you can,
I'll vote against that line.
I don't think you can, we're not dividing the question, so.
What you could do, you could make an amendment. and
You can
somebody
make a
would-
All right.
motion to make an amendment.
Then we can vote it down.
All right.
If you want, you can
Yeah.
get a second
I
for
mean,
it.
I think the budget overall is good. We kept Broad Acres open, the code enforcement officers there. We put 2 more officers in there because of the changes to that the legislature and Governor Cuomo passed. We were originally reducing the number of police officers, but I think Chris explained to us it's going to be 47 hours a week for 2 officers to deal with the
Each,
changes to the
yeah.
criminal justice system.
Yeah,
Again,
minimum.
another unfunded state mandate that we have to deal with. And as far as taxes, we've been under the cap the whole time. We've never gone over the cap. We've worked hard to stay under the cap. And you're right, it has to be transparent. Chris has done a very good job about that. But when you look at the overall taxes that you pay, please remember that I think Chris was a little high. I'd say that the town budget accounts for 28%, the county's 5%, and the schools are about 75%. So, you know, just as you're gonna hold us accountable, you should hold your school boards accountable when you're talking about why the taxes are so high in this county.
I think just to add, and then I'll get back to you, the school board raises taxes about 2 to 4% a year, every year.
No,
mean, without
listen,
question.
and I don't wanna eliminate, I don't wanna eliminate anything, but I'm just saying, part of it is a lot of unfunded mandates with the school board also. But,
Yeah.
you know, going forward, it's gonna be harder and harder to stay under the tax cap. It was It was done by, you know, Governor Cuomo to keep taxes, you know, below 2%, but to meet the tax cap, you don't have to be. Some numbers count to the tax cap, some don't. It's complicated, but I'm just saying, you know, we're only 25% of the budget for the total tax you pay in this town. If you live in a village, you know, it's even more complicated because you're paying village, county, and school taxes. Living in a village, you're actually going to pay higher taxes because there's services that the town would provide if you didn't live in the village, but you want more control over planning, over your police, over highways, over plowing of streets, and stuff like that. So with that being said, I'll make an amendment to have the raises taken out of the budget. Do I get a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay,
All
all
right.
in favor?
All in favor?
Any ayes?
We'll do roll call.
Roll
We
call.
do roll call? All right, goodbye, roll call.
Councilman Dennis Troy,
No.
Councilman Tom Clancy,
From a yes to take
Yes,
it
all
out.
right.
You're a yes and you're a no.
I was
You
about
guys
to
got
ask-
it right.
I
That's
was about
good.
to ask you that question.
We almost flipped around there.
Councilman Paul Valentine,
No.
Councilman Jerry Vitari,
Yes.
Supervisor Chris Day.
No.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Do I have a motion on the budget as a whole?
So moved.
Councilman Troy, second by Councilman Valentine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay.
You're voting on the adjustments.
But budget with adjustments, yeah?
Right.
Yeah. It was adopt, approve adjustments to the budget. Yeah.
Now we're going to vote on the whole
Done.
budget.
Isn't that also was that inclusive of the whole budget, right? We have to vote on the entire budget. That was the adopt and approve the adjustments. We approved the
Yes,
2020
yeah.
preliminary budget as well as the adjustments to it.
Yes, to approve, yes.
Yeah. Come on, Ron. Keep up.
So we put everybody back in,
Everything we did
talked about
is
back
in, yes. Everything I just referenced was the adjustments, and then the budget as a whole was also in this.
Tracking the dates.
What's confusing, it's the same
It was.
motion for both. But yes, it is both the adjustments and the budget as a whole, so
And
that's
that
all as one
includes
batch.
someone in justice court also, right?
Justice Court, the police was done previously, the code enforcement position, all that such stuff. And, yeah. Broadacres, everything that was just discussed that I said verbally. It's all on the backup to the agenda.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, the next item is to approve a one-year contract for library services. We already approved the budgeting for it in the last motion. Is there a motion? Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Batari. Batari, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is a accept the petition regarding the zone change for the PAC law, again, for the Galway Bay property, and we're going to circulate that petition. Is there a motion? Councilman Troy, second by Councilman Valentine, all in favor?
Aye.
Then set the public hearing for December 17th for 7:45 PM for that same item. Is there a motion?
Yep.
Councilman Batari, second by Councilman Divney, all in favor?
Aye.
Then authorize execution of the non-binding letter of intent for the sale of property as referenced in my brief presentation. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Councilman Divney, second by Councilman Batari, all in favor?
Aye.
Approve a retainer of outside counsel regarding an employee who can't have the same outside counsel as us. Councilman Batari with the motion, second by Councilman Troy, all in favor?
Aye.
Something moved. Resolution to reclassify a position due to a result of a desk audit. Is there a motion? Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Troy, all in favor?
Aye.
And then, resolution to set a public hearing for the Pearl River Fire District map. Is there a motion? Councilman Divney, sorry, second by Councilman Batari, all in favor?
Aye.
That's for December 17th at 8 PM. Then we have resolution to award bid for sidewalks and ramps and such on Convent Road, and the amount of $17,000. Is there a motion? Councilman Valentine proudly, after having brought it forward. Second by Councilman Batari, who's also from Belleville. All in favor?
Aye.
You guys better make use of that sidewalk.
This is only for the curbs.
Yeah, that's just the curbing. Yeah, it's not the actual, yeah. Either way, it's a portion of it. Moving in the right direction. And then we have the median tree plantings for our gateway into Orangetown off the Palisades Parkway. Motion by Councilman Batari, second by Councilman Valentine. All in favor?
Aye.
You guys are being very provincial in your voting today and motions. Lend assistance for the Orangeburg Fire Department Holiday Parade, Saturday, December 14th. Do I have a motion? Councilman Trivny, second with the motion, and Councilman Troy with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Lend assistance for the South Orangetown Holiday Walk and tree lighting. Motion by Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
Then we have a motion to lend assistance for more of that, for something else, for the same thing. Is there a motion? Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman Batari, I think.
Yep.
All in favor? Has pen moved? Next, we have lend aid retroactively to the Sunrise Day Camp Sunrise Walk event. Is there a motion? Councilman Troy with the motion, second by Councilman Divney. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution to lend assistance for the Share Christmas and the Holidays event, December 6th. Is there a motion? Oh, we'll get a verbal motion from Councilman Divney, seconded by Councilman Troy. All in favor?
Aye.
We're keeping the Pearl River people in Pearl River and the South Orangetown people in South Orangetown. Resolution to approve a budget adjustment for our risk insurance, $40,000 decrease in our expense. And, yeah, is there a motion? Councilman Valentine, seconded by Councilman Troy. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, and then do I have a motion to set and direct the town clerk to notice as appropriate a special meeting of the town board for 5:30 on November 19th to be held at the Nanuet School District, wherever they have their meetings. Councilman Troy, second by Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, Esther. Yes.
There's a Christmas party on December 14th.
Over at Venture.
Kathy Lucas Living Center.
Christmas party, December 14th, at the Kathy Lukens Venture Center at 1:30? 12:30. At 12:30. In the afternoon. Kathy Lukens Living Center. Thank you.
Motion to open the audit.
Okay. Do we have to open the audit? No.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, go.
The audit for tonight's meeting consists of 3 warrants for a total of $2.1 million. The first warrant had 57 vouchers for $208,000 and was for utilities. The second warrant had 3 vouchers for $51,000. It was for workers' comp insurance. Third warrant had 275 vouchers for $1.86 million. Items of interest, 1 and 2, the applied golf contracts. Number 5, CSEA Employee Benefit Fund, $30,000 for dental benefits. Number 6, Dell, $26,000 for computers. Number 10, NTEC, $219,000 for sewer pipe relining. Number 12, Mazer Consulting, $31,000 for traffic signal designs. And number 14, New York State Department of Civil Service, $757,000 for healthcare benefits. Any questions on the audit?
Questions on the audit for
No
Jeff?
questions on that.
No questions. I have a motion.
Moved.
Councilman Divney, second by Councilman Troy. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next, we have any other items you gentlemen would like to add that we missed? No? All right, so we have items for executive session?
Yeah.
We do. What are they topics-wise, so I can say the right
Legal,
words?
well,
Legal
legal
matters?
matter, a litigation matter that's pending that we need to speak about. And also, depending upon the discussion, what the board wants to do, I would ask that you come out and vote on something, so.
Okay, so we won't move to adjourn, but
I wouldn't move to adjourn. You
I
can
will
mention-
reference the adjournments,
Right,
though.
right.
But, okay, so normally I try to do it on one motion, but we're going to have to come back and formally adjourn. But this week, we do have at least 3 folks we will be adjourning in memory of, 2 relatives of employees of our town. Mary Cardenas, the director of our town historian, library director, not library, museum director. She lost her husband, Raul, this past week. And Doug Sampath, one of our fire inspectors, lost his father, Angus. And also, in terms of folks in the community, Dr. Lloyd Hamilton, resident of Nyack, 91 years of age, ran the Nyack Clinic for uninsured and poor, never charged a single person to get medical care at his clinic. Worked basically till the day he died at 91 years of age. Recently left us, a little weaker as a community, I think. But the clinic, as I understand, will continue being run by other doctors who are just as giving as him. Anyone else who passed away recently that we were going to be adjourning in memory of that I don't have on the agenda? Okay. So we're not adjourning now, but we will be moving to executive session. I move us to executive session to discuss litigation matters. And are there any personal matters or anything like that you want to throw in there?
Don't believe
No.
so.
Matters of pending litigation. Is there a second? Councilman Valentine, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.